Good morning, everyone. It is Tuesday, May the 12th, and it's another hot day here in Peru, Santa Rosa, Peru. And I'm not sure if you guys can hear that fan, but I have a fan blowing on me. It's just too hot, even outside in the patio here. So we are in Daniel chapter 5. This chapter starts off with a different king named King Belshazzar. And some scholars say that he was Nebuchadnezzar's grandson, and some say that he was his son. But nevertheless, he is now the new king over Babylon. And King Nebuchadnezzar, according to sources out of the Bible, say that he died peacefully in the city that he had built after he reigned for 43 years. But Babylon would not last even another 25 years after his reign. Exactly how God gave him his dream of the four kingdoms. So we'll see as we get into it. All right. Verse 1. Belshazzar, the king, made a great feast to 1,000 of his lords, and drank wine before the 1,000. Belshazzar, while he tasted the wine, commanded to bring the golden and silver vessels which his father Nebuchadnezzar had taken out of the temple which was in Jerusalem, that the king and his princes and wives and concubines may drink therein. So remember, these were the Jewish sacred artifacts that was part of the temple of God that was besieged by Nebuchadnezzar. Then they brought the golden vessels and were taken out of the temple of the house of God, which was at Jerusalem. And the king and his princes and his wives and his concubines drank in them. They drank wine and praised the gods of gold and silver, of brass, of iron, of wood, and of stone. So this king is boasting, obviously, in his arrogance, and he's, at the same time, if he realizes it or not, he's blaspheming the living God and worshiping these false idols. Not a good thing to do. In the same hour came forth fingers of a man's hand, and wrote over against the candlestick upon the plaster of the wall of the king's palace. And the king saw the part of the hand that wrote. Then the king's countenance was changed, his face was changed, and his thoughts troubled him, so that the joints of his loins were loosed, and his knees smote one against another. So his knees were just shaking. I mean, this scared the daylights out of him. You know that when God shows up to your judgment, it is not a good thing, especially for those who are the mockers and scoffers. When God decides enough is enough, that's it. He'll put the fear into you. Verse 7. The king cried aloud to bring in the astrologers, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers. And the king spoke and said to the wise men of Babylon, Whosoever shall read this writing and show me the interpretation thereof shall be clothed with scarlet and have a chain of gold about his neck, and shall be the third ruler in the kingdom. Then came in all the king's wise men, but they could not read the writing, nor make known to the king the interpretation thereof. Then was King Belshazzar greatly troubled, and his countenance was changed in him. He probably looked pale white. I don't know if you've ever been super scared, where it just feels like your soul has left your body. I have a few times in my life. And his lords were terrified. So all the people around him were also terrified. I bet that party just came to a halt. Now the queen, by reason of the words of the king and his lords, came into the banquet house. And the queen spoke and said, O king, live forever. Let not thy thoughts trouble thee, nor let thy countenance be changed. There is a man in the kingdom in whom is the spirit of the holy gods, and in the days of your father light and understanding and wisdom, like the wisdom of the gods, was found in him, whom the king Nebuchadnezzar, thy father, the king, I say, thy father, made master of the magicians, astrologers, Chaldeans, and soothsayers. Forasmuch as an excellent spirit and knowledge and understanding, interpreting of dreams, and showing of hard sentences and dissolving of doubts were found in the same Daniel, whom the king named Belshazzar. Now let Daniel be called, and he will show the interpretation. There's a lot of dogs here, 5 puppies, and they get noisy sometimes. Verse 13. Then was Daniel brought in before the king, and the king spoke and said unto Daniel, Art thou that Daniel which art of the children of the captivity of Judah, whom the king my father brought out of Jewry? I have even heard of thee, that the spirit of the gods is in thee, and that light and understanding and excellent wisdom is found in thee. And now the wise men, the astrologers, have been brought in before me, that they should read this writing and make known unto me the interpretation thereof. But they could not show the interpretation of the thing. And I have heard of thee, that thou can make interpretations and dissolve doubts. Now, if thou can read the writing and make known to me the interpretation thereof, thou shalt be clothed with scarlet and have a chain of gold about the neck, and shall be the 3rd ruler in the kingdom. Then Daniel answered and said before the king, Let thy gifts be to thyself, and give thy rewards to another. Yet I will read the writing unto the king, and make known to him the interpretation. Wow, what a humble man Daniel is. You see what happens when a person is clothed in humility, especially with the humility of God? God will use you in a powerful way. That's my prayer, is to, oh Lord, make me more humble. I need more humility. I think many of us do in our lives. But Daniel was so humble that he didn't even want to be recognized, or he didn't want the title to be 3rd in command and all the gifts and rewards. O thou king, the most high God gave Nebuchadnezzar thy father kingdom and majesty and glory and honor. So this is Daniel refreshing Belshazzar's mind. And for the majesty that he gave him, all people, nations, and languages trembled and feared before him, whom he would slew, and whom he kept alive, and whom he set up, and whom he put down. But when his heart was lifted up, and his mind hardened in pride, remember, pride always comes before the fall, he was deposed from his kingly throne, and they took his glory from him. Meaning, God and the Watchers took his glory from him. And he was driven from the sons of men, and his heart was made like the beasts, and his dwelling was with the wild asses. They fed him with grass like oxen, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven, till he knew that the Most High God ruled in the kingdom of men, and that he appointed over it whomsoever he will. And thou, his son, O Belshazzar, has not humbled thine heart, though thou knewest all this. So have you noticed that? I'm going to repeat that. And thou, his son, O Belshazzar, has not humbled his heart, your heart, though you knew all of this. So there's a point when God says enough is enough in a person's life, especially after they know about God, but continue to mock and scoff and reject him. You know, I believe that God, he knows every man's hearts. And I do strongly believe that when we continue to reject him, we continue to mock and scoff his name, even after we have been witnessed, or those who have been witnessed about him, and they continue to reject him. I believe, because I know it has happened to me, I've rejected God out of my life many times because I love my sin. And I believe that every time we reject him, God takes a step back because he gives us all free will. He says, okay. And he takes a step back. And every time he takes a step back, the more empty our lives are, the more depressed we feel, the more that something's missing, and also the more that problems come into our lives. And those problems are from the enemy, because the enemy just wants to destroy you. He wants to destroy every human being here on earth, and he'll do it through disease, starvation, drugs and alcohol, envy, strife, malice, all types of destruction. That's what God does. And it's saying here that Belshazzar knew about the amazing things that God had did during his father's reign. So there was no excuse, but he continued to live it up, party it up, and mock and scoff the living God by drinking through those sacred cups. Verse 23, but he has lifted up thyself against the Lord of heaven, and they have brought the vessels of his house before thee, and thou and thy lords, thy wives and thy concubines have drunk wine in them, and thou hast praised the gods of silver and gold, of brass, iron, wood, and stone, which see not. So these people that worship these things made of silver and gold and brass, and that still continues on today. People worship their cars. I still know people who worship their cars. That's made out of metal, and people worship those things. They worship their success or their careers, or their money is a huge thing. But all those things they see not, they hear not, or they know not. And the God in whose hand thy breath is in, and whose are all thy ways, hast thou not glorified. So just remember that all of our breath is in God's hands. When he decides to take your last breath, that's it. It's over. And unfortunately, God is about to take King Belshazzar's last breath. Verse 24, then was the part of the hand sent from him, and this writing was written. And this is the writing that was written. Many, tekel, parson. This is the interpretation of the thing. Many, mene, God hath numbered thy kingdom, and it is finished. Tekel, thou art weighed in the balances and art found wanting, or is found guilty. So that's the judgment. Paris, thy kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. So God had given his father that dream of that huge statue of the 4 kingdoms that would conquer the world at different times. Remember that? The huge statue The head of gold was Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom, and then the chest and the arms that were made out of silver was exactly the interpretation from Daniel, which was the Medes and Persians would take over after Nebuchadnezzar. Then commanded Belshazzar, and they clothed Daniel with scarlet, and put a chain of gold about his neck, and made a proclamation concerning him, that he should be the third ruler in the kingdom. In that night was Belshazzar, the king of the Chaldeans, slain, and Darius the Median took the kingdom, being about 62 years old, which is 32 years old. So, that's exactly the exact dream that God gave him happened. So now, the kingdom of Babylon is taken over now by the Medes and Persians. So, what's the lesson here? What can we learn from all this? God can strip us at any time. Just look what's happening right now. Before all this quarantine, people were just, living it up, partying, doing whatever they wanted to do, having their everyday jobs, their careers, and now everything's to a halt. The economy is down. Many people are unemployed. A lot of people in different parts of the world are starving because some people in other parts of the world work a whole day just to eat for that day. And there's other people that make a lot of money that are not anymore. And a lot of people are being stripped right now. And if you're one of the few that have your job, be thankful to God. Be thankful that at least you're working. And maybe ask Him, say, Lord, I have my job because of you. What would you like me to do with the time that I have here on earth? And the last and final thing is there is a judgment day coming for those who have rejected God. It's coming. If you're in Jesus Christ, there is no judgment day. That's what the Bible says. I cannot wait for that day. So anyways, God bless you guys. I may do another video. I just feel in my heart that I should do another video, another sermon, what I did on Sunday here with the family. It was a good one. It was about wisdom. So I'm going to try and do that. Anyways, God bless you guys, and we'll see you again tomorrow, chapter 6. Bye.